Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Surabhyaya Namaha. 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 Nandukam karoti vajalantam gurangayate gurunna yatripat maham bande guranganacharanam yatripat maham bande guranganacharanam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class. Reading from canto number 4, chapter 14, entitled The Story of King Vena. Yesterday, I believe we did text number 32. So today, what should we do, huh? 32 yesterday?
Yes.
32. So take 32. Ko Vainam Parichakshita Venam Ekam Rite Shubham Prapta Idrisham Aishvaryam Yad Anugraha Bhajanaha Ko Vainam Parichakshita Ko Vainam Parichakshita Venam Ekam Rite Shubham Venam Ekam Rite Shubham Bhakta Idrisham Aishvaryam Yadanugraha bhajanaha So Vainam Parichakshita Venam Ekam Rite Shubham Bhakta Idrisham Aishvaryam Yadanugraha bhajanaha Kaha Who? Va.
Va.
Indeed. Evam. The Lord. Parichakshita. Would blaspheme. Venam. King Vena. Ekam. Alone. Rite. But for. Ashubham. Inauspicious. Raptaha. Having obtained. Igdisham. Like this. Aishvaryam. Opulence. Yat. Whose. Anugraha. Mercy. Bhajanaha. Receiving. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. But for King Vena, who is simply inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of fortune and opulence. And repeat after me. But for King Vena, who is simply inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of fortune and opulence. Report. When human society, individually and collectively, becomes godless and blasphemes the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is certainly destined for ruination. Such a civilization invites all kinds of bad fortune due to not appreciating the mercy of the Lord. Translation again. But for King Vena, who is simply inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of fortune and opulence. Srila Prabhupada would often be making this point that when we fail to recognize who has created this material universe, when we develop the mentality that everything belongs to us, or whatever we can acquire by all kinds of unlawful means. In other words, when we declare our independence, false independence. It's like many years ago, every so many years they have what they call the World Olympics. This year is a bit of a problem to have, but this was a year in 1967 they had in Montreal. I happened to be there. The devotees actually came to perform. I heard later on. I did not know devotees at that time, 1967, and they advertise, they give a name every time, some theme, some kind of theme is there. And that year, the theme was man and his world, which is very indicative of the mentality. Man and his world, not man and God's world. Man and his world. And this is the mentality of demoniac personalities who do not understand that actually they cannot do anything without the mercy of the Lord. And this is, of course, the mood and the mentality that is meant to be developed amongst devotees, that we are powerless. We cannot do anything without the sanction and the mercy of Krishna. As Krishna also explains in the Bhagavad Gita, that he is the ability in man. So sometimes we become a little puffed up, thinking that we are very good at doing whatever it may be. But the devotee always has in the forefront this clear understanding that he is fully and completely at the mercy of the Lord. And of course, as the saying goes, one has to learn the hard way. Generally, that is how people come to learn. That is how all of us ultimately learn in this material world, by being punished by the stringent laws of material nature. And of course, the whole, we could say, modern developments that have taken place, that are ongoing, and that are demonstrating what happens when people in general, and especially when leaders, fail to recognize the supremacy, fail to recognize that there is some kind of supremacy, some kind of power beyond them. Therefore, people are being led to all kinds of calamities, as we are witnessing and seeing. And therefore, the very first requisite or prerequisite for beginning to understand that there is something far beyond ourselves is to develop that mood and mentality of submissiveness that is there in the Bhagavad Gita, the very important important instruction that Krishna is giving to Arjuna. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. It's just like, unless one comes to recognize and understand that he is having some kind of disease, he will not seek out the help of a doctor. We generally, healthy people don't go to doctors. When one knows he has feels some pain or something is not right, can't move his hand, whatever, then we go and seek help. So, in a similar way, unless one comes to this understanding that I am not meant to be the controller and the enjoyer in this material world, and for most people, for all of us actually, it's a big lesson, because that is the mood and the mentality in which we are generally, unless we are fortunate to be born like Srila Prabhupada in a Vaishnava family, where that basic understanding is taught from a very early age. But the whole Western mentality of conquering space, isn't it? The whole scientific community has been working on this mentality that we can conquer nature, we can actually that is a mentality. We can stop death, we can stop disease, isn't it? And the more we cultivate this kind of disease mentality, then we see the kind of effects that are taking place. Practically speaking, never before in the history of mankind have we experienced such kind of very serious calamities all over the world. So this was the mentality of King Vena, and the sages, the brahmanas, the saintly persons, tried to correct the situation by giving him good advice, but as we have seen, that did not produce the desired effect. So therefore, there is, the whole Vedic culture is based on understanding this principle or concept of duty or responsibility. The whole Vedic culture is meant to help individuals become regulated. The very word dharma actually is translated as duty, understanding what is our spiritual duty first and foremost, and also understanding what is our material duty. And it's most important to understand how both of these duties, both of these responsibilities need to be properly blended. And it is not obvious, it is not so easy to develop this kind of mentality. That is why devotees therefore have, we could say, this dual responsibility to care simultaneously for the spiritual well-being of all living entities, and simultaneously to also care for their material well-being, because in the Vedic literatures, which is giving us, presenting complete knowledge, complete science, there is all the information needed to address also what is meant to be the real material being. Material being means how we are meant to interact with one another, how we are meant to interact with other living entities who may not be in the human form, how we are meant to interact with Mother Nature. This is a very great science, and in the Bhagavatam, those verses that especially explain about dharma, bring us to that understanding that it is only when we properly understand dharma, properly apply dharma, that all of our material and spiritual needs and material and spiritual necessities of life are met. That is very nicely explained in the verse referring to the param dharma, savai pumsam paru dharmo, jato bhakti radhoksaje ahaituki pratihata yayatma sutrasidati. In that particular verse, Srila Prabhupada explains how Atma, although generally referring to the spirit soul, Atma, that is the nice feature of Sanskrit language. Depending on the context, the same word may mean something different. So Atma, in that particular verse, in that particular context, refers not only to the spirit soul, but also to the body and to the mind. So just like I was just beginning to read, they have in our ISKCON society relatively newly introduced department, or it may be also ministry, I'm not sure, regarding what is called devotee care. Devotee care. Caring is meant to be at the basis of all of our activities and endeavors. Caring is intimately connected with the theme of what is it? Doya, or mercy. One who cares becomes merciful to others. One who cares about dharma, one who cares about God, about Krishna, will naturally also care about all other living entities, will especially be sensitive to the situation of other living entities. So His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj often speaks on this theme of care, of caring. And he was in a recent talk, I believe, explaining that very often in our ISKCON society, because we so often stress on the point that we are not this body, so if we see a devotee who sometimes falls sick, we may tell him, Prabhu, you're not this body, you don't have to become so bodily conscious of your situation. But actually, although we are not this body, we are residing in this body, and we need to be sensitive to what is taking place. We need to be responsible so that this body is properly cared for, so that it can be properly utilized in Krishna's service. And in a similar way, the whole material creation is meant to be organized in such a way that there is harmony and peace amongst human beings, between human beings and other living entities, between human beings and Mother Nature. And this is only possible if we develop this kind of mentality, which is very much the basis of Krishna consciousness, that everything, because it is created by Krishna, everything belongs to Krishna, everything is meant to be cared for because it is an extension of Krishna. This is only possible when we develop a more, we could say, refined consciousness. So this is being referred to here, both in the text and the purport. When human society individually or collectively becomes godly and blasphemes the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is certainly destined to ruination. Such a civilization invites all kinds of bad fortune due to not appreciating the mercy of the Lord. We'll just read a few more verses here. Next few verses don't have any purport, so we'll just read the translation. The great sages, thus manifesting their covert anger, immediately decided to kill the king. King Vena was already as good as dead due to his blasphemy against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, without using any weapons, the sages killed King Vena simply by high-sounding words. The power of sound vibration. Even material sound vibration is very powerful. All living entities in different species have certain ability to hear sound, which varies from one species to another. In the early days of aviation, when they started, when the airplane was invented, because airplanes travel at a very high speed, and they make some very subtle sound, subtle and not so subtle. And in the early days of aviation, if flights would come to a lower level where there were many buildings with glasses, all the windows were shattered. So, within nature, there are many hidden secrets, many hidden forces that are unknown actually to mankind. And what to speak of. The material sound is very powerful. The spiritual sound is even more powerful. So we see here in this description that the Brahmanas, being very qualified Brahmanas, qualified in mantra recitation, that simply by vibrating what is called high-pitched sound. There is a story related to, I believe, Narottam Das Thakur. Some of you might have heard it. In the Vedic literatures, for example, in it is one of the sciences that is taught, Gandharva Veda. In the Gandharva Veda, there is the science of music, and the science of music means the science of sound. And therefore, if we compare Vedic music or Vedic sound vibration to what is known in the Western countries, there's a very huge difference. So it is said that one time when Narottam, I believe it's Narottam Das Thakur, who was actually very adept in composing music, as we know. We chant every day. Various bhajans composed by him and other great acharyas. So it is said that one time, because when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had introduced the holy name, his Sankirtan movement, we know that at that time it was under Muslim rule, and there were different injunctions forbidding at times devotees to chant in public. So one time, Narottam Das Thakur, who was not only a great composer but a great singer, he mastered, we could say, sound vibration to such an extent that there was, on one particular occasion, some objection from some local Muslim for his chanting in public, and then his reaction, a little bit similar to here, but not exactly the same. But he started vibrating the chanting in such a high-pitched tone that it burned all the mustache or the beards of the Muslim people, and I guess they couldn't, sometimes the sound is, I think we all have that experience, is so acute that we have to block our ears. Actually, one can become deaf. One's eardrums inside the ear, which is a very complicated machine. The eardrums, if they are, damaged, just like, our Rameshwar Prabhu has to wear, many people have to wear a little instrument to, because somehow there's some damage in the ears. The ears are very, very delicate. And sometimes some unexpected, really heavy sound may come. It's like you have these big trucks. Sometimes if a tire blows up and you just happen to be there, that's your karma, right? Then you'll become deaf, because it's so. These are some of the, we could say, hidden potencies of nature And obviously, we are not the ones who have created nature. We have not created this body. We are born in this body. So, intelligent person will begin to respect nature. Nature has immense potencies, and this is something important for devotees. For devotees, devotees actually can see the presence of the Lord because of the immense potencies that are hidden actually within material nature. So here, this is the example being given that the brahmanas simply by sound vibration, by high sounding words, means high sounding mantras. So next text, which also, next two texts actually don't have purport, we can read this. After all the sages returned to their respective hermitages, the mother of King Vena, Sunita, became very much aggrieved because of her son's death. She decided to preserve the dead body of her son by the application of certain ingredients and by chanting mantras. Again, lost science. This chanting of mantras is called mantra yogena. Mantra yogena. So there's a science whereby one can preserve body. I mean, there's a science whereby one can make a dead body come alive. Kali-yuga, these are all, of course, unknown. And we'll just finish with the last text here before taking up tomorrow's text, 37. So text 36. Once upon a time, the same saintly persons, after taking their bath in the river Saraswati, began to perform their daily duties by offering oblations into the sacrificial fires. After this, sitting on the bank of the river, they began to talk about the transcendental past person and his pastimes. So this will take us to a new pastime taking place here, where the saintly persons will realize that without a king, the country is becoming uncontrolled, and this is an introduction to how a very great personality will appear, who will replace King Vena and rule the world, and that is, of course, Sri Maharaj. So I'll be leaving that for tomorrow. Any questions? Comments on it? Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.